Well, listen, you know, if you like a dystopian future, this is the feeling of a dystopian past. Yeah, and being such a lifelong fan of his, it was very surreal. I loved working with CD Projekt. They were so wonderful, and the team at Side where I recorded here in London, everyone was really, really wonderful. So it genuinely is one of the best experiences of my life.
So dream big. If you can hack it, the future's yours for the taking.
Oh, Gavin, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet
you.
you.
Here at the Globe on this glorious day.
A cracking day, yeah.
I was wondering if we could roll it back and kind of maybe start with Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
How did that kind of, because it's been, you've got some more distance from it now. How did you kind of look back on that time? I imagine it must have been like a mega long process.
It was long, yeah. I think it was over, if you include the DLC, it was 4.5 years maybe. It was a long, long time. It started like any, part would, with a very boring story about an audition, and I went in. I didn't know what it was for, they try and keep things confidential. But I told a friend of mine who, I'm a gamer, but my friend is a serious gamer. And I explained a little bit of what was on the page in front of me, and he was like, I'm pretty sure you're going in for Cyberpunk. So I went in and I just had a stab at it, and they came back with a couple of notes. And I had no sense that they'd ever kind of go with me, particularly, an Irish actor and doing the American accent and all that. So it was amazing to get that opportunity.
It's an interesting combo of Irish actor, Polish studio, American character.
Yeah. We're recording in London, So it was everyone was involved, yeah.
And because I know it kind of coincided with COVID somewhat, right? The production on it.
Yeah, no, it did. In fact, I remember there are. An astute ear could probably find them. There's a couple of lines, a sequence of lines where they brought the very specialized microphone around to my very small apartment at the time above a barber shop, and I had to sort of put some pillows up, and they needed a couple of redo lines or whatever. But initially it started outside of that, and then obviously lockdown happened. So that was like everyone else, just balancing with working with people on Zoom and all that. But actually, to be fair, most of the time it was like that. We'd be in a studio here in London, and bars, a lot of the crew and the directors and stuff would have been obviously in Poland. So we just have them on the line a lot of the time. So it wasn't much different for me in that sense.
I understand that you guys were not in a booth together or anything, but what was it like knowing that, or kind of having Keanu's lines plumbed into you and having to kind of react to?
Yeah, and being such a lifelong fan of his, it was very surreal. At first it took a little while to adjust. I think he had recorded a good chunk of his dialogue first, which is a real gift for me then to be able to just respond to that. But it was great to, even occasionally hear him kind of, shift in the chair and change something and play around with it. But it was so helpful to have that experience of having his dialogue first and then being able to respond. That made my life so much easier, and I'm sure he had those times where maybe I would have caught up and gone ahead of him and recorded a few extra sequences, and then he'd probably record a few. So it was back and forth like that. But unfortunately he was in LA and I was in London. So most of the cast, I think, were split quite 50-50. Some in I know Idris Elba, when he came on board, was in the studio that we recorded in London. Yeah.
When did you guys get to meet them?
No. I think we briefly. I think maybe I missed him by 20 minutes one day or something. But no, he was kind of in and out. Again, I think people's schedules like that, they have to kind of just get it all done in one clump. And I think with V, both myself and Jeremy, who obviously played female V, there was a much more time needed to be spent on crafting all of it. So poor Idris had the hard stuff of all the plot and explanations and things like that. So yeah.
Amazing. And how does kind of working on a game like that, especially like a branching kind of RPG with all these different dialogue strains and stuff, how does that compare to something like a play when the script is the script and you've got to do it night after night kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean it's very different and very similar in a way. I think there's something particularly with theatre and voice recordings. It's the voice. There's so much of that is in the Globe. You're in the elements. You're outside. A plane might fly overhead, and you're having to sort of create an intimate space and an intimate voice, but be heard in every corner. And I think in the same way, playing V or any other kind of recording I would do, you have the microphone right there, but you're trying to convey and I think it actually requires quite a theatrical performance, because you have no face, you have no body to convey any other emotion. I think that was something I learned when I first started. I would record a few lines and I would hear them back, and I would have thought I would have conveyed the emotion, but I was performing all of it, and actually so much that has to just come from the voice. And when you work on a text like Arthur Miller's, where he's written the lines with just such kind of, they're so visceral and they're so alive, the language is the thing. That's what we have to bring to life, is the language, are the lines. And so yes, it's a very physical process on stage, but it's the physicality of your voice that I think is maybe a through line between the two jobs. Yeah.
And how would you describe the Crucible to someone who's maybe seeing this because they've seen Cyberpunk in the video description or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, I can go and see this guy.
Well, listen, you know, if you like a dystopian future, this is the feeling of a dystopian past. This was the Salem witch trials of the 1600s. It was a town in early America that was very closed off, and all around the town, these accusations of witchcraft. People believed that it was possible to possess one another, and anyone who committed a sin they committed it by being controlled by the devil. And so the play is really about, what are you willing to do to save yourself and condemn other people? If you were called before this court and you were accused of witchcraft, your best hope was to accuse somebody else and to get and I think, the world of Night City is a very similar place. I mean, it is cutthroat. They're mercenaries. Everyone is out for themselves, and it's about finding yourself in that world. And John Proctor, the part I play at the center of the play, is a man who's struggling with his own sins and his own faults, and his own mortality, exactly the same way that V is. So I think there's some nice similarities in a way. I think if you are a fan of the game, I think you would really enjoy this play for the atmosphere and the vibe. And I'm sure when you go see it, you can't even imagine that this world existed at some point in time, the way we find it hard to imagine that Night City would one day exist. But we see in the little things day to day that it's very possible, that humans are capable of some pretty brutal things to one another. Yeah.
Amazing. And obviously it's quite rare to have a non-Shakespeare play at the Globe. I imagine this location is going to add so much to it as well.
I mean, it's the first modern classic play that's been done in this space, so there's a huge amount of responsibility. I think we all feel. We're very excited, we're very scared. And yeah, when you stand on that stage, it really feels like a crucible. This is this melting pot, this place that will condense everything down to its singular truth, and it's unlike any space I've ever played on. The fortune to get to stand on that stage is just, I'm very, very lucky, and to be there with the first modern classic in that space, it's a formidable task, but we're all chomping at the bit. Yeah.
And how does TV compare to gaming, compared to theatre? What are the differences there?
They are different, and then they're similar. I think at the end of the day, it's telling truth. It's trying to be truthful in a moment. I think the moments that land most in Cyberpunk are the moments of humanity in V, in the performance. When you hear him breaking down, when you hear him struggling with his mortality, with the decisions he has to make. It's the same for John Proctor in the Crucible. It's the same for any character you play. And yeah, maybe there's little things you tweak, how quiet you can be with a microphone, how small your expressions can be on a camera, and then how maybe powerful and large you can be on stage. But they're all just levels that you turn up or turn down. But the actual instrument is the same. It's the telling of the truth. It's the conveying of humanity, of a person's soul.
And also a bit of mental gymnastics, though, being like, okay, now we're in the timeline where this has happened and that's
happened. But I think, again, same. Like, I mean, trying for us as a cast, having sat down for the last few weeks, to try and get ourselves to a place to be alive in that time of Salem in 1692, and the sense of paranoia and the native tribes attacking you, and feeling like you can't trust one another, and to be so devoutly religious that the idea of witchcraft can be real. I mean, that's our job, I think, as a cast and as a company, to convince the audience when they come in a much more kind of secular modern world. Can this be real? Can you feel like this is real? And we see it in our own lives, modern life. People can be pretty mad and do wild things. So nothing changes in people over hundreds of years. It's all the same things that they're grappling with in Salem now and in 2077.
And when you do a play kind of over a kind of extended period of time, are there things you do to kind of keep it fresh night after night kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big warm up and a coming together of the company beforehand. But when I'm sure on lesser plays, it can maybe feel a bit repetitive. But when you work with somebody like on Arthur Miller's work, on his text, there's so much in his work that every night you will find something new. You'll hear a new line said in a way that you haven't. So the best thing about theatre is what makes it alive and fresh and different each night is the audience. Every single audience is different. They might laugh in a moment that you didn't expect. They might cry in a moment you didn't expect. And it's this sort of living organism, all of us together, when we step into that space. And there's just nothing like the magic of that live theatre. And if you haven't experienced it, particularly here, yeah, you have to come.
Amazing. Something in what you just said did make me think about how it's not a million miles different from gaming, because you can't anticipate which way the player is going to go, what thing they're going to do, and they will probably find things that you didn't expect them to find yet, and stuff like that.
I mean, modern video games, the storytelling, the writing is so phenomenal now. I mean, we've seen it now and translated now into television with The Last of Us and things like that, that it's always the best work in any medium is the relationships, the dynamics between one another. And when I played Cyberpunk, I found myself taken out of myself as an actor thinking about the performance, and you're just swept up in the story. How quickly you make a decision on a hairpin turn, and before you know it, you're down one rabbit hole that you didn't even intend to, and that's great writing. It leads you in a certain way that you didn't expect to be led. Very similar to this play. There's moments where you think, God, just go that way, walk out the door, walk away, and they can't. And that's the best thing about great writing. It drags you into its world, and you lose yourself in it. And what's wonderful about video games is that you get to be physically in that space and move with the character. And that was very challenging as an actor. That most of the time you're given a performance and people are looking onto you with it. But with V, it was a performance that had to be for everyone else. That it was their performance. It's not me. It's them. And V is each individual person playing it. I have less ownership on it than probably any other character I played.
I did go back and try to remind myself of how many Cyberpunk DLC endings are there when V is still kind of alive and going, because at the end there are not that many of them from what I can work out. Would you love to revisit Night City if you could, if there was a way to do it?
If there was a way to do it, absolutely, in a heartbeat. I loved working with CD Projekt. They were so wonderful, and the team at Side, where I recorded here in London, everyone was really, really wonderful. So it genuinely is one of the best experiences of my life. But I just want the story to be the thing, and if that means V's involved, great. If it means it's new people in Night City, that's exciting too. So we'll see. It's actors, they trust the writers. That's their job. So I'll leave it to them.